My name is Sarah Kim, and I'm from Austin, Texas. I'm a Cheeselandian because while life is great, cheese makes it better. Go to cheeselandia.com to learn more, and if it's for you, sign up.
Welcome to Pizza Quest. I'm Peter Reinhardt, a man on a never-ending search for the perfect pizza. This show is the audio version of the Pizza Talk YouTube series, where I engage in interesting conversations with some of the country's greatest pizza makers and other artisans. Thanks for joining me on this quest. I want to welcome all the people who are just joining us now, who are watching Pizza Talk. I'm Peter Reinhardt, and I'm with Noel Brohner, who's in LA. Noel, as many of you know him from different sort of parts of his life. We're going to get into that, but really, I think most recently, a lot of you may know Noel because he's the one who organized the big pizza party, the Zoom pizza party, back in, when was it? At the end of March, early April. It was the first sort of thing that happened during this COVID era. That what happened I'll tell it the way I saw it, and then you tell us what really happened, because we want to hear how you brought it all together, because that was pretty phenomenal, and that's before any of us even knew that Zoom existed. It was that Pizza Expo where we were all going to meet, and Noel was in charge of putting together a really cool sort of 3-day extravaganza at the King Arthur booth and getting a lot of pizza superstars together to do demos. Well, all that got canceled. And everybody was kind of like, what are we going to do now? We were counting on getting to see each other and, hang out and do pizza. And so Noel came up with this idea of a virtual conference that kind of take the place, at least to fill the gap. And after that, he just made it happen. So why don't you tell us a little bit about all that, the genesis of that, and then we'll get into sort of more of your own backstory.
Whatever you say, Peter, it's your show. Thank you for having me.
Yeah, that was good to have you.
So let's see. Excuse me, I'm kind of losing my voice. I've been on Zoom a lot the last 2 months, and so I find myself screaming into the microphone. So pardon me.
Well, during the 3 days of the I don't know what to call it, the Lollapalooza that you put on with Zoom, you were on constantly. It was like you were hardly never on. So I don't even know how you kept that.
You know, it was funny. I kind of thought of it like the Jerry Lewis telethon, except it was me, not Jerry Lewis, and it was pretty exhausting. Backstory is that like you mentioned, I was planning on going to the Pizza Expo with everybody else, and I help at the King Arthur booth every year with Jeff Yankelo, and he and King Arthur have trusted me the last 3 years to not only put together a team of great pizza people from around the country, but also do a demo stage. And so I'll just go back to that real quick, because that was really how this whole thing got started. And I was working with Jeff and Rob DiNapoli and from DiNapoli Tomatoes. And every year we would just do our best to, besides make great pizza and have fun, to do our own kind of demo schedule. And the first year we were lucky because we were on the edge of nowhere. And so you could do whatever you wanted. If you were like, at the ground zero, you had to be really careful and only this many chairs and this much spacing, and you got to respect the aisles. But in Siberia, you could do whatever you want. So right. I invited Chris Bianco and Tony G and all these people, and lots of people that nobody's ever heard of, to come and do the same things they do in the halls and in the upstairs rooms of the convention center, but do it on the floor. And it really, really went well. And, we're just trying to spread pizza love and have a good time and make great pizza. And so we've ended up doing that every year since then. And it was only 2 years in a row, but it's something that we all look forward to. And then this year we had a great show planned, and we had, all kinds of new staff, and it was going to be awesome. And then, of course, first it got postponed, then it got canceled. And I don't know about you, but at the end of March, I really didn't know what to do with myself. I was going crazy. I'm in Santa Monica, and we were just starting to kind of hunker down. And I'm an active person. I work I've been in the restaurant business for 30 years. I work for a living. I wish I could say that I didn't sometimes.
Yeah, right.
I just came back from a 5-week trip to the Middle East consulting, and I had a lot of things going, and suddenly I was shutting everything down. And it was kind of depressing, and I didn't know what to do with my life. And one of the local pizza people here had just done a Instagram live kind of thing, And I was like, wow, Instagram Live is cool, but I want to do something more. And I've been doing a lot of Zoom calls like everybody else. And I thought, I wonder what this Zoom meeting thing is. And I went on a Zoom webinar to learn more about Zoom meetings and how scalable they were. And that was on a Monday.
Yeah.
And I started calling people. Rob DiNapoli was one of my first calls. Jeff from King Arthur was my second, saying, I don't know how this would work, but I'm thinking about doing like a pizza expo virtually. What do you think?
Yeah.
And they're like, I don't know what you're talking about, kid, but it sounds great.
Yeah, right.
I was like, good, because I don't know what I'm talking about either.
Right.
And then within a week, we were up and running. And by the following Tuesday, we were doing our own little virtual version of the Pizza Expo. And it was incredible how it happened because I really wasn't sure of how it would work at all. And running a Zoom meeting is a lot different than running a Zoom webinar for 500 or 1,000 people.
Yeah.
As you're learning, Peter, right? So I started calling people, mostly chefs, and I was surprised that for once in my life, my batting average was 1,000. And everybody from Crispy
we were all in the same boat.
said yes. And really, how could people say no? We were raising money through Scott Wiener, Slice Out Hunger. So 100% of the proceeds we're going to go to charity. Although at the time it wasn't certain because we didn't really have any sponsors yet. We had literally lost all our sponsors. So anyway, it turned out being a great event. Pretty much everybody showed up, and it didn't matter who showed up and who didn't because we had a great a crowd of people that showed up and paid whatever it was, $5 or $10. We tried to keep the price low.
That's right. Yeah, there was like a little registration fee for people.
Very low. I think it was 5 or 10. I can't remember.
About that. Yeah. And some people showed up who you weren't even expecting. You had a whole schedule worked out of who was going to come on when, and then other people would just sort of drop in and go,
that was
hey,
the best.
Can I get in on this?
That was the absolute best. And you know what's funny? Like, I mean, you kind of mentioned it before, but I've been in the nightclub business and in the music and restaurant business my whole life. So I'm used to everything from, flights being delayed for bands to dishwashers and servers and bartenders not showing up. So I'm ready to jump in anyway. I'll wash dishes. I can't really sing, but I've played the piano here and there and I've DJ'd when I have to. I'm ready to go, right?
Yeah.
And so this was kind of the same thing, except your whole team is everywhere else in the world, not right next to you where you need them. And so if you have something going on, you can't just say, hey, Peter, what do you think about this? You've got to like text someone or WhatsApp someone. And
yeah.
I was lucky to have found somebody on a website called Upwork who had a lot more experience doing kind of back-end Zoom stuff. So his name is Wiki, and I'm still working with him to this day.
He was like in India, wasn't he?
He was.
So he was actually, chiming in from India and he was handling all the behind the scenes things. But I remember how many times I could hear you say, Wiki, are you there? We need you.
Well, you know what's funny, Peter? I remember it took us a couple hours to get you up and running on Zoom because we were rehearsing for 2-3 days, just trying to get our
game. Yeah.
And then once you were up, you would just show up in the morning while we were trying to get our stuff together. And there you'd be, Peter Reinhardt. Exactly.
I thought we were going to all get together and have a meeting, and you were going to explain it, and you were still working up with Wiki to try to figure out the logistics.
There was nothing to explain, really. Nothing to explain.
And so I kept dropping in, and then the cool thing was that as I was learning to kind of log in and all, that I could just also drop out during when you started running the event, so I could sit in on some of the panels. I could chime in with a few words. I had my scheduled time when I could do a presentation on the baking triangle and all that kind of stuff. And then other times I would just be a lurker, just be a rubbernecker watching what was going on.
Yeah, that was great. It
was a cool event. And it ran for 3 days, and it actually
3 days is the Pizza Expo.
Yeah, exactly when the expo would have been. And so it was actually as a result of that. I used to call it the pizza party, the Zoom pizza party, that the idea of Pizza Talk came out of that because Brian Spangler dropped in a lot on the party, and Brian and I and John Arena were supposed to do a presentation at the expo called Tinkering with Your Dough. And Tinkering with Your Dough was was going to be our panel. And so we did a little mini version of that, on your party. But then Brian calls me afterwards and says, that went really well. We should, maybe we should keep doing it on Zoom and just recreate our panel for the people who weren't able to come. And that evolved into Pizza Talk. And so Brian and John are kind of our most regular guys on Pizza Talk. And we call them the Pizza Yodis. And they come in and we talk about tinkering with your dough and all their aspects of the craft of pizza making and of life. You know, they're Yodis, so they talk about a lot more than just pizza. They talk about they're like the elders, you know, the panel of elders, and that panel of elders is growing the more that we talk with folks one-on-one. Then we invite them to come back and join the panel. So our Yodi panel is growing.
Hold on for 1 second, baby.
Yeah, see? And this is live on Zoom. This is what happens. It's real.
Normally I have these noise canceling unidirectional headphones on, but they broke. So, Annabelle, I don't know if we can switch, maybe for segment 2. My wife is used to making lots of noise in the kitchen. Nobody can hear, and I'm pretty sure you can hear.
She want to come on and say hi?
She's in her jammies, but maybe.
All right. Well, tell her to change it. Come on back later so we can hear.
Thank you.
Anyway, so that was a really cool thing, I want to thank you for doing that and kind of in a sense dropping me in the deep end so that I could learn about this new medium, which I needed to know about, and of course the world has caught up. But now what are you doing? So I believe at the time that all this came crashing down, weren't you working on putting together a new pizza restaurant concept? Is that what Slow Rides was going to be, or is that consulting?
Yes and no. Originally, I've been in the restaurant business for a long time, since I was a teenager, pretty much. And so I actually had a restaurant and nightclub for a long time, which was relatively successful. I mean, yes, it was successful, but it was crazy because I was 25 and didn't know what I was doing, and was underfunded. But we made it work. It was awesome. And so I always wanted to get back in the restaurant business, and I had this silly misunderstanding of pizza and bread that it was easy, right? And so I actually bought your book. That was like the beginning of my.
Oh, cool.
And so if you look really closely, I still have all the
greatest tribute to an author of all time is to see those little Post-it notes in there.
Yeah. And so a buddy of mine here in LA who now owns a brewery, John at Smog City, and his wife Lori, we were all going to open a brew pub, and I was going to do pizza, and they were going to do beer. But it all got messed up, and not in a bad way, but for me, as a restaurant professional, I don't have any kind of grand ideas that I was going to just jump in knowing next to nothing about pizza and make it work. So I did what I thought I should do, which was get jobs at local restaurants and learn to be a line cook, because that was like the only job I'd never really done in a restaurant. I mean, I jump behind the line and plate pastas and do whatever, but when I had my own place, but it's different than prepping and really running your own station. And then I also sent myself to baking school, French Culinary Institute in New York, because I thought, all right, I had no offense, but I'd used your book and failed because really, those books are awesome, but if you don't have any kind of grounding in artisan baking and you're trying to do anything beyond a pizza or two, it's hard.
Yeah.
I don't have to tell you. And so, between baking school and line cooking and staging wherever I could, I eventually got better and better. And then by accident, I got into pizza consulting. So, I say by accident because when you're a freelance pizza person and your phone rings and somebody's like, hey, a guy I know needs somebody at this place. Are you available? You're available, right?
Yeah.
And so I just made myself available to pretty much anybody who called.
Yeah.
And it started getting better finally, I mean, culinary school is great. I recommend it to anybody who can afford it. I took 2 months off of my life to go how to basically learn, the basics of baguettes and brioche and bread. And
obviously we're living in New York then at that point for those 2 months at least.
I had to move to New York for 2 months.
So did you, while you were in there in New York, did you get a chance to hit up some of the great iconic places?
That was my plan. So here's what I did. Every day I jump on the subway at about 6:30 in the morning.
Yeah.
And I lived in the bottom of Harlem, down below Columbia. I take the train down to French Culinary, which is Soho area, a little bit south. And I would be there from 8 to 3. And then at 3, I'd literally have your book in my backpack, and I'd go to the far reaches of New York and hit up, I'd try to hit up at least 2 slice shops before dinner. And then my wife, who was studying for a big exam in New York, would hopefully come with me, and we would hit up at least one place for dinner. Nice. So that was about 3 places a day for 60 days, which is not nearly enough days.
No, but it's still quite an immersion.
Yeah. And so, I mean, I could have gone to baking school in San Francisco at SFBI, but I didn't think they had the pizzerias to support my habit because I was a pizza junkie.
Not like New York City, that's for sure.
No.
And by then, and at that point, Tony's still hadn't opened in North Beach, and there was some of the great ones that are there now didn't exist then. There were a few old timers like Tommaso's, but no, San Francisco wouldn't have scratched the itch for you.
It's really hard to say because it depends on you. But for me, my mom grew up in Brooklyn, and that was Totano's where she lived, right? And I grew up going to Joe's Pizza kind of by accident. We would go into the city and we would go to Joe's. And so for me, that was the only place for New York pizza, whether it was coal-fired or just regular old deck oven pizza. So I wanted to be there and I wanted to learn. And I met Roberto from Keste there. And I came back and worked for him for a couple of weeks at 2 locations. And that was great too because, that was probably just after Nancy Silverton had opened. And so there wasn't very much in the way of wood-fired pizza going on in LA. And after working at Roberto's and learning at French Culinary, I could respond to any Craigslist ad and basically get the job because there weren't many people with wood-fired experience. And also I really wanted to learn, I wanted to make dough more than anything else. I mean, learning to work a line is very important, but I really wanted to make dough and understand how that process worked and scale up, right? Yeah. And so, that's what I did.
It's quite an apprenticeship. And like you said, you can only learn so much at a culinary school. I teach at a culinary school. We tell our students, look, this is to get you in the door, but your training really begins when you get a job and you're working the lines. You're coming to culinary school so you can get that first job and then get in there and not make a fool of yourself and have some skills. But there's nothing like real life immersion, and yet diving in without some preparation and training, you can get messed up that way too. So it's cool that you kind of have plugged all those different notes. And meanwhile, you're developing and accruing all this life experience, and you're running restaurants and clubs. So you put all that together, and you've got a nice package. It's kind of cool that you got into consulting, which is interesting because as we're talking to more and more people, we're starting to see that pizza consulting, which was like hardly existed as a pathway for anybody before. Now you get guys like Anthony Falco, who is like the international pizza consultant, which is a self-proclaimed term that he came. Great marketing, and all of a sudden everyone goes, "Oh, he must know everything because he's international," and then the jobs start coming in because there are people that are hungry for knowledge.
And what's so great about like the pizza world is that really I don't consider anybody competition because we all have our own little niche. There's only one Anthony Falco. There's only one Peter Reinhardt. There's only one Noel Brohner. And none of us are at all the same. Technically, you could say that we all make artisan pizza, right? And each of us knows a little bit about this and that, but we all have our niches, right? And that's the beauty.
It is. And the cool thing is that by teaching other people what you know, it actually deepens our own knowledge. I think the best way to learn anything is to teach it to somebody else. And so every consulting job that I've ever had has not only, paid well, but also and been helpful to the client, but it actually deepens my own knowledge base because you learn something on every job that you do.
Yeah, well, you're lucky because you started off as somebody with a name, right? You had cookbooks behind you and a career. I started out as a line cook consulting. And so my initial jobs really didn't pay. I was doing it, I wouldn't say for the glory, but really just for the experience because I felt like whatever I made, whether it was $10 an hour or $1,000 a week or whatever I was charging back then. Yeah. And by the way, I was not charging $1,000 a week. I wish, right? I felt like no matter what, I was being paid to learn. And when somebody said, all right, I want to do wood-fired sourdough. Can you do it? Of course. I want to do grandma pizzas. Can you do them? No problem. And then you're like, grandma? Wait, that's like Sicilian, right? Oh, wait.
You learn that right away as you always say yes.
You say yes. You say, because I think from the artisan pizza standpoint, once you understand fermentation, right? Yes. Once you have a working knowledge of how kitchens and restaurants work and how chefs think and restaurateurs, it's just really about moving the parts around. And I'm not saying that it's the same thing over and over because it's really not, especially when you start to work with chefs because the first thing they do is test you and they find out where your limits are and then they push you past them. And that's why I love working with chefs.
Yeah, it's great. And you're right. And while we're being as helpful as we can be when we take on a job and you wouldn't get the job in the first place if you didn't have some knowledge to share that they needed, something, a piece of their puzzle. But then, then we keep growing and our repertoire expands. So for those who are just joining us, I'm talking to Noel Brohner, and we've been kind of catching up a little bit since the Zoom pizza party and some of the other things that have led to it. But when we come back in our next episode, what I'd really like to do is talk about, okay, how now are you adjusting and pivoting, in this COVID era? And I know you're getting into a little bit of teaching here and there, and doing, and what have you learned in terms of this media immersion that we've all had, that we can maybe take into the future for all of us? Stick around for more Pizza Quest after a word from our sponsor.
My name is Sarah Kim, and I'm from Austin, Texas. I'm a Cheeselandian because while life is great, cheese makes it better. Wisconsin cheese has proven time and time again to be a delicious expression of craft, hard work, and tradition. As a Cheeselandian, I'm able to share a Gouda experience with fellow cheese and food lovers nationwide, as well as connect with cheese producers and cheesemongers, taking my love of cheese to another level. I invite you to join Cheeselandia because during these difficult times, it has been even more important to take it easy and get cheesy. The Cheeselandia community and events have been the glue helping to keep us together and connected, and I would love it if you would join me. And let's face it, if you hear the word cheese and get a little hungry, then you've found a place you can call home. To find out more about Cheeselandia, go to cheeselandia.com.
We're continuing our conversation with Noel Brohner, by the way. Thanks for rejoining us on Pizza Talk. In our last episode, we were talking a little bit about the pizza party, the Zoom party that you organized, and some of your own journey. What are you doing now? Now that the the projects themselves, a lot of projects have come to a slowdown, and maybe there's not as much. Well, it sounds like you're still getting consulting work, but what do you see for the future for yourselves? And tell me about some of these classes that you're teaching.
Yeah. So let's see. It started with Zoom Pizza 2020. That's what we called it. Started with Zoom Pizza 2020. Or sorry, God, it's backwards. Pizza Zoom 2020. That's what we called it.
Yeah.
And so after that, there was a little bit of I kind of described myself like the Jerry Lewis from the Jerry Lewis telethon of pizza. So after that, I had to take a shower. I had to take a nap. I had to learn my wife's name again because I took myself out of circulation for like a week. And so after that, what was so interesting was that, all right, we raised a bunch of money. I kept like the pizza vibe high in the community, and a lot of people thanked me for that. But, I taught myself a whole new set of skills, and anybody can jump on a Zoom call, even my mom at this point, right? But to run an event for 500 people a day taught me, all right, I've been wanting to do Zoom pizza classes or at least online pizza classes for a while, but I thought they'd be impossible. And now I no longer thought that because I saw what was possible on Zoom. And one of the interesting things that I saw on Zoom was that it felt weird, right? And so you're having these interactions and you're having like these lags in video quality or audio, and it doesn't feel right, right? You're talking to people, but they're in these little boxes and it just feels weird. But when you watch it after the fact, it's the same. It looks different and feels different, but when you watch it and you're not participating in it, it's pretty good.
Yeah.
So I thought, all right, here's what I'm going to do. I've been doing, I work as a pizza consultant 100% of the time. And then once or twice a month, I would do these pizza classes. Sometimes they'd be in Los Angeles. Sometimes people would invite me to other states and do them. And so I was like, all right, I wonder if I could do this more often if there's a desire out there. And I don't really have a connection to the outside world except through Instagram, right? And so my Instagram followers are hardcore. And so I started to just like, kind of put out like funny little pictures and things saying coming soon. I didn't even know what to call it, right? But during Pizza Zoom 2020, I just thought, all right, this is going to be the future. And so I reserved ZoomPizzaClasses.com. And so I just started with the hashtag ZoomPizzaClasses.
Oh, that's cool. So you actually got like a domain.
Oh, yeah. And I'm not really using it, but one morning, like the second morning I woke up and I was like, this is a thing. I can't believe it. And I just reserved it on, GoDaddy or whatever, $6. And so when I was done, I was like, all right, how am I going to make this work? And so I kind of put out a teaser or two on Instagram. And I talked to this guy, Wiki, that I was working with in India. And I said, hey, man, I know we talked about this a little bit. I'd really like to do something with you. I enjoyed working with you. Can you help me? You know, I want to make a website. I had Slow Rise Pizza URL, but I never used it. It said coming soon for 6 years.
Right.
So I'm like, I think I want to build a website, and I think I want to do the same thing using Zoom and sell tickets. He's like, let's do it. So we spent I thought it would take a week, but of course it took 3. And then 3 turned into 4. So about a month later, I was pretty much ready. So about 6 weeks ago, I launched my first class. And I really didn't know how it was going to go, but people signed up like crazy. So I did a second and a third and a fourth. And in the first week, all the classes sold out except for the first one. And the first one would have. Just didn't give it enough time, because that's the thing. I don't ever give anything enough time. As soon as I'm ready, I'm like, go.
Yeah.
And so like I gave myself 2 days notice. But after that, people had 3, 4, 5, 6 days notice. So all the classes are basically sold out.
So what do you charge for a pizza class when they?
Well, so I didn't know what to charge, and I'm a chronic undercharger. So like for Pizza Zoom, we charge like $5. And what I did building up to it was I just charged like $1 or $2, and I did like these. I would just like put it out there. 50 people would show up on a Saturday or a Sunday and just ask me questions. And me and this guy Justin, who was my co-host on.
Justin's great. He was the co-host on the Big Party too. He's a funny guy.
Yeah, so he's an actor in Los Angeles, super talented and funny, and a crack video editor. So we started doing these webinars, and we would look at them and edit them and use. We take like 30 seconds off of a 4-hour webinar that we did, and like edit it and just like put it online, and people would be like, oh, that looks funny, and 20 people would sign up, or 50 people, or 2 people. It depended, you know.
Nice.
I'm not real good at that stuff, and you never really know. Plus, like I said, I always give people like 24 hours notice, and then I go live. So I'm sure I could learn something about marketing, excuse me, from lots of people. But cut to 6 weeks later, pretty much all the classes are selling out. And what do I charge? So I started out at like $50 for a beginner class, $75 for intermediate, $100 for advanced. And I've upped the prices a little bit since then. So they're $75, $100, and $125. And I think I'm going to up them again, because now I'm building in a new component where you can watch the videos after the fact. But I'm not just putting Zoom videos online unedited. We're editing them down and trying to make them a little more digestible. And so, I'm working on that right now. You know, the money is an interesting thing, because what will people pay? $5, $10, $50? And what I found is really interesting is that there is an appetite out there, especially right now, for baking and specifically pizza. And the problem I've had in the past is when I did those 1 or 2 classes a month, they would always sell out in LA. And I had people traveling from all over the country to come to them. Not at the beginning, but after a while. But a lot of people said, can't you just put these online? I'm like, I don't know. I don't know. I don't want to put a bad product online until I know how it works. Plus, I had my doubts. And I've always had my doubts about the internet, and I've always been wrong. And so what I thought was, how can you teach a bread or a pizza class? You need to eat the pizza. You need to touch the dough. We all need to be in the same classroom, right, mixing together with the ingredients that I choose, so I can control the beginning, the middle, and the end. Otherwise, how can you do an online pizza class when you don't even know the flour people are using?
That's right. So there's a lot of challenges, but yet possibly now surmountable.
Well, yeah, because once you do 1, you realize what some of the challenges are, and you adapt. Then 2, then 3, then 4. Yeah. So after a week of pizza classes, I was like, wow, first of all, I can't believe how many people are signing up for these classes. That's awesome. And also, they go really well. These intermediate and advanced classes, which at the beginning were my favorite, are great, because you get these minds together. Everything from like 11-year-old girls who are great at baking and learn everything on YouTube to, famous chefs, literally household names showing up. And so that's awesome. And I love that like confluence of talents and levels of everything, skill. But then the beginner classes are also cool, because I do a 2-part beginner class, and it's usually 2 nights back to back. First class will be like basically 2 hours of how to mix, right? How to stretch and fold, how to bulk ferment, how to ball, all these things, shaping and pre-shaping. And then the second version, again, two hours will be like, how do you open a dough ball? How do you top it? How do you bake it? How do you hack your oven? How do you prep your pizza peel? You know, what are the different styles, right? Neapolitan, New York, Roman, whatever. And so it's great because all of us are making pizza together, and we're all eating pizza together and sharing our successes and failures. And it's the beginning class is awesome. And what's really great, which never happened to me in the real class, well, not the real class, this was silly, in the on-site classes, is that we all make dough together, and then I wheel out a giant cart of dough that me and Justin had made the day before, and it's great, of course, because we know how to make dough. But then these people are like, okay, I get it. I hope I can do it at home. But now they're actually doing it one night and then eating it the next night, and they're like, I can't believe I made this. Like, I've been making pizza for 20 years. All of a sudden, you're showing me stretch and folds and pre-shapes and maybe temping your dough, maybe not. We don't do that in the beginner class. Has made a huge difference. And you see these light bulbs go on.
Yeah.
And then people sign up for other classes.
They interact with you during the class. Is it set up in such a way that they can ask questions and dialogue with you?
Yeah. So the way that works is that basically there's different levels in Zoom. And so you have attendees who are both basically silent, but they can communicate through chat. So we promote everybody from attendee to panelist. So we're all basically on the same levels. I'm what do they call it? I'm a host and Justin's a co-host. So we can take people out of the meeting, or we can mute their audio if they Zoom bomb us.
They're hecklers.
No, we don't really have any hecklers except for like my mom, who always
It's usually the people who know you the best who are the hecklers. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
So have you had to put a cap on how many can participate, or is there no limit because it's Zoom?
Well, it depends. So at the beginning, I was capping them at about I think 16 for the beginner classes and maybe 20 for the intermediates. But as we get better, we can handle more people. So yeah, we can do 25, 30. And now we're doing classes on Airbnb on the Air Experience platform with up to 100. That just started actually yesterday. Oh. So a lot of what I do, it's like anything else that I've ever done in my life. You think you're doing something new and you think it's going to be about A, B, and C. And then people call and say, yeah, but can you do D? And you're like, no, but I'll try. So a class for 100, Wall Street Journal, sure, why not? So today I have a meeting at noon with a woman in New York, and we're going to talk about a big class. And also, like, I love the Airbnb platform because most people think of Airbnb as a website you go to for hotels, right, or places to stay. But, you know, they contacted me about 1.5 years ago about this new thing they were doing called experiences. And an experience could be anything, but their idea is, let's do a pizza experience. And I'm like, that's dumb. Nobody comes to LA to make pizza. And so what ended up happening was that, that's true, but you have a lot of LA people who hack the Airbnb platform for stuff to do in LA. So they thought 80% of the people would be the 5 million people coming to LA a year to stay at Airbnbs, and 20% would be locals. It was the opposite. 80% were locals and 20% were travelers. And so it was another great, it was another way for me to get in touch with people who wanted to learn how to bake. And so, and it put me online as well. And so it's like a lot of little baby steps.
I didn't even know about that platform. So what do you offer in the intermediate and then in the advanced classes that you're not offering in the beginners classes?
Well, the beginners class is really just an opportunity for people to, I start real slow. So flour types, right? Hand mixing. We do a 2-hour mix, right? And we go through some of the artisan steps. We go through, all right, this is an autolyse, and now we add the yeast, and now we add the salt, and this is bulk fermentation. Let's write down the temperature of the dough. We're not going to do anything with it. Let's just write it down. Let's do some stretch and folds. Let's feel the dough, right? Is it getting stronger, right? How does it feel? Is it sticky? Yeah. And then, and we talk to people about different choices they're making, and it's great. Then for the intermediate class, it's a lot like French Culinary Institute, I suppose, because I'm really like, all right, guys, we're taking the training wheels off. Let's make this is a 3.5-hour seminar, right? And I actually, for the first time in my life, I've never had the time to do it in an on-site class. I walk people through the 14 steps of artisan baking that they taught us at French Culinary, every single step. And I explain how they're all interrelated.
Uh-huh.
We do basically a short mix or a hand mix in the beginner class. We do an improved mix in the intermediate class. And then in the advanced, we do the intensive mix with the add-on of what some people call hyper mixing.
Oh,
You know? Have you heard about that one, Peter? Hyper mixing?
hyper mixing, man.
So it's interesting because
Unless you're talking about a food processor or something like that.
Well, no. So basically it's this. It's the intensive mix, but the authors of Modernist Cuisine and Modernist Bread, I read their Modernist, I tried. I kind of, it's 1,400 pages or something. I browsed their Modernist Pizza library, and they came up with this thing called hypermixing. And hypermixing is when you do a longer than average intensive mix with a high hydration dough. It can be 20, 40, 60 minutes, 2 hours.
Yeah, now that I've heard about, yeah.
Yeah. And
I didn't know it was called hypermixing.
Neither did I.
But that's interesting, because you know that the Modernist Cuisine folks are working on a Modernist Pizza series now that's going to come out. It hasn't come out yet. They've been working on it for a few years. They always announce it about 2 years before it actually comes out. So
you want to hear the worst thing?
Any time, maybe this fall it'll hit the streets. You know.
I can't wait for that to come out. You might think that I'm really good with technology, but they contacted me maybe 2 years ago to see if I wanted to participate. And they DM'd me on Instagram. At the time, nobody was DMing me. I was really new to stuff, and I didn't even check. So 6 months later, I saw the message, and I'm like, oh my God, I can't believe. And I emailed them and forget it. You're too late, Noel. 6 months.
What does DMing mean? I don't even know what that term is.
Direct messaging. And so.
Oh, direct. Okay. See, that shows you how out of a loop I am. So that's why every time I talk to you or anybody that knows more than me, I'm picking up like new terminology and new ideas. So that series should come out, and that will, kind of build off of their Modernist Bread series, which I got to participate in that to a small extent, and it was amazing, fun.
Amazing, right?
And I got to visit their, their labs up in the Seattle area. I can't wait for the pizza book to come out.
Yeah.
In fact, we're going to try to get Stephanie Swain, who did appear on the Zoom pizza party. I'm going to try to get her to come on and do a one-on-one so we can catch up and find out. I know she can't really announce when it's coming out until they actually know when it's coming out. So she always says, it's coming soon. It's coming soon. But I want to get her to talk about some of the adventures she had in traveling really all around the world. She got to do the true pizza quest on Nathan Myhrvold's time, where he sent her everywhere to gather information and talk to the great players in the game.
Incredible.
Yeah. So the pizza classes are working out for you quite well. Is it because it's keeping you pretty busy now? It sounds like it's a growing enterprise.
Yeah. So, after about 6 weeks of classes, the next phase is going to be putting them all online so people can access them, not live, but at their leisure. And that's what people have been asking for. And that's a whole other thing that I really don't understand, because you've got so many issues to contend with. You've got bandwidth and load speed, which is very technical. You've got video security, right?
Yeah.
So you don't want people being able to access and download your stuff and do whatever they want with your product and your brand. Right. But, it's very hard to stop people from doing what they want to do because they're going to do it.
But that sounds like the Craftsy model, which you and I have talked about before. Craftsy has a library of thousands of these great instructional courses that people they pay for them, and then they get a code and they can download them at their leisure. Yeah. And I think that is a great model. And then I think Udemy is another platform that does the same thing, where they have these courses. So there could be a way to maybe either, for them to, I don't know, using either as a model or to use their platform as a way to make those available to the general public. Because what's the point? I mean, it's one thing to do it live and have people there when it's really happening, but then you've created all this intellectual property. Why not be able to make it available and sell it, to people who missed the window on that one, so you don't have to keep repeating the class over and over again?
Well, it's an interesting quandary, because I think the thing about teaching is I really actually love it, and so I don't think about teaching as a chore. And so when before COVID, I would get up on a Saturday or a Sunday and go to teach a class, and that would be my day off. And I would have 25 people coming to Service Restaurant Supply in LA, and I'd have to get there at 6:30 in the morning, and they'd get there at 10. And I love it. I really like teaching, but my problem is that I like teaching on my own terms. And that's what Zoom has afforded me. I do what I want, right? And so I'm just hoping that people will respond. And we talked about this yesterday a little, Peter, when we were chatting about what we would be talking about today. And I think it's really interesting, these platform choices that you have, right, in the digital playground.
Yeah.
And what I'm trying to do is avoid all of those platforms and kind of create my own, because I don't know if it'll work. I really don't. And there's a good chance that I'll fail, but working with these big companies that set all the rules, you can say this, but you can't say that. And this is the length of your video. You really shouldn't go over like 2 hours. I'm like, my intermediate classes are 3.5 or 4 hours. I don't like to stop at an artificial time if the class is still going. Right. I'm going to answer every question no matter what. Yeah. And even when I'm done, there's always going to be 2 lingerers that have 10 more questions. Yeah. And so I love that.
Yeah. In fact, when you're teaching a live class, there's always a couple of people who stay while you're trying to do cleanup, who just want to keep picking your brain and that's fun. That's fulfilling. And I think that there is something so fulfilling about teaching, whether it's in front of a live audience or just sharing knowledge. And that's one of the things we've really learned in doing these Pizza Talk interviews, is how much joy the people in the game have for making pizza, for sharing their knowledge with each other. That's why Pizza Expos and these gatherings are so important to us, because people love to share what they've learned. It's like swapping war stories, and nobody's kind of like hoarding their knowledge, because they know that we're all in this one big game together, and there's enough to go around.
Yeah. It's going to be interesting if there is a Pizza Expo in Vegas next year, is that I have to figure out what the digital component is going to be. And that's going to be awesome, because there are 20,000 people or however many people there are a day at the Pizza Expo. What about the hundreds of thousands or millions of people that aren't going to be there? And it makes me think like, wow, you don't really need very much to either live stream or Zoom or whatever your platform is. And so for me, what I think is interesting is that I'm starting to go back to my normal life, and I have a bunch of projects that are starting, that have already started. And right now I'm doing all my consulting virtually. So I've got clients all over the world that I'm working with, mostly on Zoom and phone and email. But pretty soon, I've got restaurants opening in LA, this month, next month, the next month. And so the challenge is going to be, I still want to do 1 or 2 live classes a week. Yeah. I want to get my library of classes up so people can access them, right? But now I'm like, maybe I don't have to fly to Beirut to do a project. Maybe I can do a lot of it on Zoom, and maybe I don't even have to be there for the opening. Not that I don't want to be, but it really opens up the world to me, and I think a lot of my clients, because think of the expenses. They have to fly me out. They have to put me up.
Yeah. Right? Yeah, there's a trade-off for this, because there's such a intrinsic pleasure of being able to travel and experience the cultures of these various places. And that's part of what I love about getting on the road, is going to, even within the States, cities that I've never been to or revisit. But then again, the cost and the hotels and everything else adds to, the ticket price. So if you don't have all those expenses, you might be able to offer a better price to the client as well.
Absolutely. So it'll be interesting to see how things change and what the new normal is going to be. But you know what? I keep saying this and what I'm seeing is that I know there's a lot of suffering going on in the world, and I know a lot of people are unhappy, and for good reason. And that includes me as well. Yeah. I'm definitely suffering and I'm definitely unhappy, but I'm also looking around at all the people who were successful, whatever that means, before this whole thing went down. And I'm seeing the ways that people are readjusting, right? And for me, it's actually really inspiring, because people who were hardworking, contributing members of society before this went down still have an opportunity to do the same thing. They just have to do it in a different way than they were before, right? Yeah. And you were talking about a friend of ours yesterday who's one of the biggest, pizza personalities in the world. And you said we were talking on the phone, he was actually delivering pizzas in his car.
Yeah.
And I'm like, that's what chefs are doing now, right? Whatever it takes, just like when they started.
It's the first thing you learn when you get into this game is you do whatever it takes, to make it happen. And so it has to have that attitude. And not just chefs, but chefs intrinsically, are imbued with that you've got to do whatever it takes to get through that shift, to get through the day. and to deliver the service. Well, we could talk about this forever and ever and ever. So why don't we get back together in the future after we've been a little deeper into the cycle of things, and as we see how it does play out as we return to various stages of normalcy, and you can, kind of catch us up on how you've, made it happen, and we'll just keep swapping life lessons as we go along with this.
Sounds like a plan. Thank you.
Well, thanks so much for being part of Pizza Talk today and for sharing, your story. Thanks for putting on that big show, and good luck with the classes. If people want to sign up for them, do they just get to you through your Instagram? Is that the best way?
Yeah, I'm Slow Rise Pizza.
You've got like 12,000 followers on Instagram. That's pretty amazing in itself.
It's pretty amazing.
And you don't even have you don't have a restaurant. It's just your brand. So how did you build that up? I got to know that before we end this.
That was kind of on accident. I used to just email and text people pictures of pizza, and a buddy of mine, Matt from Tribute Pizza, we were going to the Pizza Expo actually probably close to 10 years ago. I used to tag team with different people every year, and we'd go and share a hotel room, and we'd try to scam badges off of people. And so he took my phone on the car ride there. We were driving through the desert. He's like, give me that thing. What's your address? What's your wife's name? So he made me an account with a password. He's like, here, your Slow Ride Pizza. Stop bugging me. And I was like, he's like, how many followers do you want by the end of the next 3 years? I'm like, no. I don't want that. I don't want 1 million followers. I want people who are into what I'm doing. And I didn't understand then what followers or friends or any of that stuff was. I didn't want 250 friends I didn't know. I just wanted 3 that I did. And I think organically.
That you don't know, but many of you do know now.
So person by person over the course of probably 5 years. I honestly don't know how many years ago that was. It feels like 10, but it was probably 5 or 6.
Yeah.
I just climbed and just keep posting mostly pictures of dough and crumb shots. And you know what's amazing to me about social media? My people, I get more likes on crazy bubbly dough shots and interior shots of dough than I do on pizza. And so it's really not about the pizza so much as the process and the inside of the process, which is.
So let's face it, close-ups on dough structure is a very sexy thing.
Right, modern is bread. I can't wait to see what they do with pizza.
I know when I was doing my early books, and I would ask the photographer to come in closer for certain shots, and they go, "No, we don't do that. That's food porn. We don't do that." This was before there was all this internet stuff, and I said, "But people want to see up close." And then, I'm kind of laughing now because now it's all about as close as you can get. It is the, sort of the microscopic look into structure and cell structure. And that's just one of many ways that people, connect.
Peter, I just want to thank you again I know you published a lot of books, right? And I know the Bread Baker's Apprentice was your big book, but for me, this was one of the books that got me into pizza and caused me to dive down the rabbit hole. So thank you for having me on. Thank you for
the fun book I ever wrote. I'll tell you that. It got me to the place that I've gotten before. But Noel, thanks again for spending all this time with us today. I look forward to circling back with you, and we'll get you back on Pizza Talk in the future. Pizza Quest is powered by Simplecast. Thanks for listening to Heritage Radio Network, food radio supported by you. For our freshest content, subscribe to our newsletter. Enter your email at the bottom of our website, heritageradionetwork.org, and connect with us on Instagram and Twitter at heritage_radio. You can also find us at facebook.com/Heritage Radio Network. Heritage Radio Network is a non-profit organization driving conversations to make the world a better, fairer, and more delicious place. And we couldn't do it without support from listeners like you. Want to be a part of the food world's most innovative community? Subscribe to the shows you like, tell your friends, and please join the HRN family by becoming a member. Thanks for listening.